Good morning, everyone. John471 here to discuss the S&P 500. Today is Tuesday, April 29th, 2025. Allow me to read our disclaimer. Derivatives trading is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Let's begin today, as we always do, with our news. Today at 8:30, we have retail inventories ex-auto advanced and wholesale inventories. We also have Beset speaking, as well as U.S. trade balance. Moving on to the 9 o'clock hour, we have several real estate numbers, Case-Shiller, FHFA. We also have JOLTS, and we have consumer confidence. So the 10 a.m. number will be, or the 10 a.m. Hour will be important. Moving on, we have Trump speaking at 2:10 Eastern, as well as ECB's Villeroy. Trump speaking again at 4:45 Eastern. So that's what we have on our docket today in terms of news. Let's give a quick glance at the higher time frame charts. Here's S&P 500 full session daily candles. What do we see here? What we were looking at yesterday, we have this April profile, and we have this LVN here in the middle that we were trying to push into. LVNs, we know, are prices that the market doesn't like to trade. And we can see here that we're seeing resistance as we push up into it, but it hasn't stopped this kind of just sloshy shuffle higher. What happens if we push through this? What's the key target? Well, it's the March VPOC, which is 5670. What's the target if we fall below this? Well, the ultimate target would be our developing April VPOC of 5300. This is the general lay of the land. Our attention, we see this area right here, this very unauctioned area. So we can kind of consider these several days as almost their own entity. Let's go to a smaller time frame chart and discuss that a bit further. Okay, this is an RTH only chart with daily profiles. The bars are 30 minutes. What's important here? Well, we can see a little bit more clearly this sort of like kind of island situation we have going on here, where the market just levitated above the area it was trading before and just has kind of kept shuffling. You see, we opened here, pushed higher, pushed lower, and this is where the real fight happened. And then we popped above, and since then we've just trended above there. Now I put this red line as an anchored VWAP from the area that we popped above and began to trend. And as you can see, we're kind of popping above it. Yesterday dropped below it a little bit, but have pushed above. Now here's the thing, we pushed into it here, but we haven't taken this high yet. So that's fairly important. Right out of the gates, I'm also going to mention, look at this profile. What does this say to you? We have this ledge here. We pushed above this ledge, and the taper goes the other way. So to me, that says that there's some willing sellers up there. Doesn't mean we can't get through it. And really, willing sellers up there, we knew that. But there's an awareness of willing sellers. We have this LVN, and this is more or less a double distribution profile here. Although yesterday's profile looks pretty unfinished to me, pretty toothy. So right out of the gates, just seeing that, we want to be aware that if we just chop around in here, that's a real possibility, and that could be a day to either be outside in or be hands off, because that could be a very difficult trade if we just end up chopping around in here. Otherwise, if we're able to break and extend above yesterday's high, we know that the gap close is the big key target. And if we really get ahead of steam, this is our ultimate target, which might be something that we get later this week if this is where participants want to take us. If we take yesterday's low, we're one time framing here, so we have to understand, if we take yesterday's low, there is a possibility to just take it and then lick check, and it's like nothing ever happened. But if we take yesterday's low and then we are unable to kind of get that reversion, because a lot of people, again, we're getting into that situation I talk about where a lot of people are playing this, this long, which potentially has less risk reward unless we break. If we just rip higher, then the long is going to be great. But if we don't, and if there's too many longs in here that are trying to buy dips and they're not getting their targets, we could revert lower into these single prints, which will be the key target for me today, below yesterday's range. If we really get ahead of steam, then obviously we're looking at the gap zone. Let's go to a smaller time frame chart and plan for this more specifically. Okay, here we are on our intraday chart showing the past few days action as well as the overnight action. What can we notice right out of the gates? Well, giving a little bit more attention to what happened yesterday, we see we fell through this key LVN I was talking about and started to get some extension, but we were unable to get the yesterday's low, so the one time frame was preserved. We also had a pretty aggressive move higher out of the lows, but this aggressive move higher didn't get the high, and it closed odd. We managed to close above RTH mid with a IB low only break, which is historically unlikely. And it was weird because there was I didn't see any like real sell pressure at the end of the day, which was odd, considering the way the day shaped up. But regardless, we were able to recover. We've held this for the most part overnight, but we haven't gotten the high. So right now, just be aware, we have an inside day in progress. As of right now, this is an inside day. Let's discuss our scenarios for today. We'll begin with bullish ideas, because that's the dominant trend in this mess of trading days we have. So we'll go over the ideas. We see that we push lower, attempting to kind of re-auction some of this area, and we seem to have found support. The support doesn't really mean anything unless we can get back into this area. This is where the decisions were made. So what's going on here doesn't matter to me unless we can get above this zone and start to hold. Let's assume we do. If we get above this zone, which is the prior week's high, and start to hold, then obviously I'll be open for a test of yesterday's high. That would be our initial target. If we're able to get on this long, it's pretty tight. We might not be able to. But what's the better long if we see this this bullish action start to open up? Well, first, how will we know it's opening up? Well, we're going to have to see rotations expand and this high get taken, just as I said, not a rejection. Start to see these rotations expand higher in that event and hold on pullbacks. Rotations expand, hold on pullbacks, then I will be looking for gap close, or really this zone, this 5,600 zone. That'll be my first big target here. If we get this target, be aware that on any excursion above this, I would not be opposed to seeing a pretty significant wave of selling come in that pushes us right back into range and gives us more balance or chop or potentially lower. That's a strong possibility on that attempt. However, if we don't see that and we see us get to the top of the gap zone, hold on any pullbacks and continue, then I would be going zone to zone, looking for our eventual key target, maybe later this week, which is the March VPOC, the 5670s that I talked about in all of these areas up here. So first waypoint, 5,600 to close the gap. If we can start to trade past that, then I'm open to price discovery and higher targets. How can we take the overnight low and have this still happen? Yeah, we can, because here's the thing. This area is just like no man's land right in here. So if we drop into this area, this LVN region I talked about, this will not tell me anything about direction if we just trade in here. We could just chop around in here and then pop higher and get that exact scenario I talked about. That could easily happen. So we need to be aware of that. Let's discuss bearish ideas. So the most bearish idea would be if these highs just hold, like we drop back into this area, we take the overnight low, and we start to do that chop around in this area thing I just talked about. So seeing that, it's outside in, it's no man's land. But if I see us make an attempt higher, unable, we push lower, we start to get into this area, below this 12 zone, then I would be open to a test of yesterday's low. Now, here's the thing. If we test yesterday's low, one time framing break, like I mentioned, we could just easily test it, get into this zone, this 79 zone, and it could very easily be a lick check and just revert higher into this area, this unauctioned area that we were just in. So what I'm saying is be aware if we get the whole way down here, oops, wrong color. Get the whole way down here below this 12 zone, I would expect a test of yesterday's low, but I would be aware that we could just lick check and just get back into our existing range. That's a possibility. What happens if we don't? What happens if we get into this area and we can't get back out, or we pull back and we revert back below? Well, then I am looking for the next target area below, which is, you guessed it, these single prints. If we test these single prints and we still can't get back above this 80 zone, then I would be looking zone to zone lower to take out these singles and then these singles. And if we really continue, I would just be going zone to zone, knowing that the real big target, which I wouldn't expect us to hit today, but would be this gap zone, closing this gap zone here. So pretty clear what's going on here. Don't need to spend that much time today. We're actually just in a trend here, trending. And what we just want to know is, okay, are we just going to continue this trend, in which case we might have this trade available? Or are we going to break this trend, and in which case we might have this trade available? But if we do not want to break this area, then we're looking at outside in and a potential inside day. This could be a tricky day, guys, because there's to me, it's very difficult to see which possibility has the higher higher probability of happening. And then also as well, there's a lot of things that could happen which don't really mean anything for the larger trend. Meaning we could easily just push higher, take this high, chop around, even get this gap close and fall back. And that's just a continuation of what we saw. It's not really telling us that much. Further, we could just pop lower, and we could take this one time frame. We could even go to these singles and revert. It still doesn't tell us a whole bunch, meaning that, you know, both of those could just be tests. So when we have a lot of possibilities, that can end up being a more difficult trade. My advice when we're in that situation is you need to be very patient, and you need to wait for the setups that you're most comfortable with and be willing to not trade. That's what I got for you today. We're going to cut it off a little tighter today. We're a little late, so I want to give you guys time to get to your stuff. As noted, we're probably going to be adding crude oils at some point this week or next. Any feedback in the comments, I always appreciate. But hopefully that's fairly complete. What we see here is pretty straightforward. We're seeing a trend higher, and as of right now, we have an inside day. So pretty straightforward. Hopefully this is helpful to you and you find some utility in this. Hopefully you're having a great morning and your great morning continues. But most importantly, hopefully you can find a way to improve your trading today that is not dependent upon your P&L, but is dependent upon following a process. That's what I got for you. Let's get out there and clock those ticks. Ciao.